Hi, I'm Claire Williamson, an ex-litigator and the co-founder of Leading Minds. With 97% of lawyers complaining that stress is impacting their health, I think it's time that we speak about how challenging the pressure of the legal industries can be. So this podcast is a space where lawyers can discuss how they've overcome the challenges they face in their role and gone on to thrive within their career. So whether you're a trainee, a partner, or anyone in between, this podcast will hopefully leave you feeling inspired, empowered, and with the confidence that you can leave your mark on the legal industry. And today I'm honoured to welcome tech lawyer and future Clifford Chance trainee Lorraine Chimbga to talk to me about building your brand to establish success within the legal industry, which I think at the moment is a particularly important topic as so many people are maybe facing, the kind of prospect of not being kept on a traineeship or maybe struggling when they graduate to apply for traineeships. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lorraine.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Claire. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'd love to kind of just start by telling me a little bit about your introduction into law. So where did you study and how did you kind of go from there?
Yeah, of course. So I originally went to UCL and I started in 2013 and I did a straight LLB degree there. And because UCL is part of the University of London University, I also got to go to LSE in my third year. And that's where I did information technology law in my final year. And that's where I started to kind of build this interest in tech law and seeing the possibilities of what I could do in the legal industry. Because when I graduated in 2016, not a lot of people were talking about tech law in that kind of way. So that's really been my path through law and studying.
Amazing. And I know that amongst, doing your law degree, you've done a number of phenomenal things, and I'm sure that that will come out of the of in the conversation. But one thing I really love is your website, Life of a London Law Student. And I just wondered what actually drove you to start the website.
Yeah, so it's actually a very interesting story. So at UCL, we have a publication called The Silky Bee, which is a student-run magazine. And every year, of course, they have the elections for the committee. So I actually ran for publications officer, but I didn't, of course, win it. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to make my own magazine. Why not start a blog? Because really, I realized I'd missed my love of writing. When you start studying, sometimes those things that you love and your hobbies kind of fall away. So I wanted to reconnect with something that I used to love because I really found first year and second year really difficult. Secondly, I just wanted to leave something behind. So when I was studying, really, there wasn't a lot of visible mentors. So I didn't really see someone, a Black woman like me studying at top London University. So again, I wanted to leave kind of a little mark and a story behind to show that it was possible. Whether I got through or not, I just wanted someone to be able to see that it is possible. And there is someone like you reflected on this. So that's really how the blog started back in 2014 in my second year.
Amazing. And you're still maintaining that now, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's kind of evolved over the
Yeah.
years because I'm not a London law student anymore. It's still called a life of a London law student.com. But now I'm just kind of charting my path from London law student to future tech lawyer. So throughout the years, I've been putting, so I started really putting my revision on there and notes. And then obviously that's evolved more to kind of giving advice on how to apply for training contracts, applications, doing tech law. And now obviously I recently started the Instagram page as well, which has been growing, which is great. And again, I'm kind of marrying those two things together and still posting advice. And it's really great to hear feedback from aspiring applicants when they say, oh, your tips really help. Thank you for kind of posting that.
Amazing. And I do think there's so many more people, because like when I was, this was a little while ago, about 12 years ago, probably longer than that, terrifying. Let's not go into the exact numbers. When I was applying for traineeships, it really wasn't a thing that you kind of, social media wasn't such a big thing either, but again, let's not go there. But it wasn't really a thing that you kind of had to have this brand or this personality, before entering the profession. And how useful do you think social media has been in your career success by having this kind of brand?
Yeah, I think it's been really instrumental in some ways. So I never started the blog thinking, oh yes, I need to become a legal blogger and build a brand or anything like that, really. It was born off just wanting to help people. But then on top of that, I realized, oh, great, I can now start improving my skills. And it was a big conversation opener in terms of networking. So for example, I remember in second year, I approached basically the editor of the Times after an event where Justice Hale was speaking. And I said, look, I really enjoyed the event. Can I write it up? I've got a blog. Here's the link. Can I write a short piece for the Times brief on diversity being a buzzword? And, it's kind of just that brave thing to do. But he was really impressed and he said, yeah, of course. So I ended up writing for the Times, the brief. And from that, I also wrote for Milk Round, which was another student graduate website at the time. And then that kind of evolved as well into just posting again about legal tech and the developments in there. So I ended up posting, obviously I had the blog on LinkedIn, and ultimately my first job after graduation came because the manager found me on LinkedIn because of the work I've been doing. And so, he messaged me and said, hey, we're a fintech startup. I've seen what you do. Would you like to have a conversation? And that's how I got my first job from after graduating.
That's so cool. And I love the fact that you mentioned you're in the Times, because I was definitely going to try and find a way of winging that in, because when you told me, I was like, that's so cool. Yeah, that's really cool. I would just have that like on a name badge on like my thing. Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. Well pictured. Amazing. And so in terms of with kind of social media, and obviously like you've got the kind of different portals in terms of LinkedIn, and you've got your website and your blog, and then you've got kind of Instagram as well. Do you ever feel kind of scared to kind of be almost exposed on it as well? Because obviously there's a positive that you're building a brand and you've got something to talk about, but then also like people might then kind of I don't think some people are almost scared to post anything in case it like works negatively against them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So do you ever kind of have that, or do you just find that balance?
So personally, first of all, I've got a really strong network around me. So, usually I'd ask my flatmate or my boyfriend, hey, is this a bit too, is it okay to post this on the London Law Student blog or not? But really, secondly, I'm a very principles-based person, and I just really have this internal set of values, which is basically the reason why I do what I do in terms of my blog is to help other people. And as long as that's the first thing that I'm thinking about when I do create content, when I do share something, I think it's highly unlikely I'll share something that's problematic or would expose me in that way, because that's just my thinking behind the whole blog and platform, to be honest. So it's not a personal thing, it's more just how can I help? I can't mentor everyone, but how can I mentor as many people without actually meeting them? So that is really why I do London Law Student and the blog and everything that I do on Instagram.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think that there's definitely more, like when I entered the legal profession, it was very much, or maybe it was just in my head, but kind of really aware of like showing any kind of personality I was really aware of, like, kind of, yes, no, yes, I'll do that. Yep, no problem.
Yeah.
And I think there's still a little bit of that sometimes, but, and that's why I think probably it held me back from almost wanting people to have a perception of me before they even met me. But actually, I think, you're right, that it can work in your interest. And especially if you've got as number one, you're just wanting to kind of help other people.
Yeah, I think definitely it's about being genuine. I think that's what you're kind of hinting at as well. If you're genuine, it's really hard to kind of do the wrong thing most of the time. And I think you're right. The legal industry is changing. I mean, you're starting to see more and more legal influencers, or whatever you want to call them, or bloggers. I don't view myself as that, but definitely it's becoming more acceptable to post about your training contract application process, or like vlogging your experience at a VAC scheme, which is what I did when I did my Clifford Chance one. And as well as that, I think going for the right firm makes a huge difference. So I remember on my first day of the VAC scheme going to graduate recruitment, I've got a blog. Can I write about this during my 2 weeks? I mean, obviously it's scary because what happens if you don't get it at the end? But I just really wanted to share my experiences, and they're very supportive, and they allow you to have your personality, which is really great. And I think firms are definitely starting to have more of the human element rather than just having to be this legal professional and not have anything beyond that.
Yeah. And I definitely think since lockdown, I don't know if you would agree with this, but there is a lot more personality as well. Because even things like, you are seeing me in my house, and you're seeing into other people's lives, aren't you? And it kind of does just make that like human element that we probably hadn't encountered with our colleagues before. So I do think that we're starting to see more people, especially like I noticed it on LinkedIn over the last few months. I think people are posting much more like personal things, and not like obsessively overly personal things, but you're getting a little bit more of an insight into people's lives in a way that it was quite formal and quite, very strictly professional beforehand.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good shift and a good change, because at the end of the day, a business is a business, but it still has people within it. And, you know, if people are connected, and I guess like you're saying as well, the lockdown has really shown us just the community element, and some of these things we thought were necessary, having to suit up and tie and
Yeah.
not show who you are. Really, we've kind of started to see that that's not necessary to have a good kind of professional working life. So that's been a really interesting thing to observe.
Yeah, you know that everyone's really got like loungewear on the bottom half.
Yes, basically, just don't stand up. That's my advice.
I actually spoke to a partner last week, and he had like a football top on whilst we had the initial call, and I was like, I love this. Like, I never would have had that. Or I spoke to another partner a few weeks before, and in the background he had like you know, he was obviously a keen cyclist, but I never would have known this, but there was like a little kind of placard, like a little postcard that said like keep cycle or repeat or something like that, and I was like, oh, you're into cycling. So I think just getting that like little like stem of connection with people that you wouldn't have had before is really, really good.
Yeah, I've really found that as well. Obviously, at the moment, I work in legal tech, helping to train artificial intelligence to read commercial contracts. So my job is kind of very hybrid as well. And I kind of work as an account manager, you say, or customer success manager. And whenever I'm speaking to my clients, I've gotten a different insight to them, because usually it's a very formal Zoom call or something like that. But now kind of seeing them in the background, like we were saying before, because you start to see their personality, you realize you've got something in common, and, you know, you've just built another business relationship in a strong way. So it's been a really good thing for just that connection bit.
Yeah. I'd love to ask you about your role just now, because you just said artificial intelligence, and that's always exciting to talk about, but and a few different things as well. But what I'd love to ask, just going back to that kind of social media thing, was if you were kind of giving tips to people that were maybe either finding themselves at the moment, you know, worried that they weren't going to be kept on, or you know, worried whether they were going to, you know, still join their traineeship, or if it's been put off, or even kind of making applications for a traineeship. How, is there any tips that you would have in terms of using social media as a certain platform that you would recommend, or just what would you really recommend for people just now, apart from obviously following, you know, your website where you have, I know, you know, a real wealth of resources there, but if there was anything that you would like to say just now, what would it be?
Just start. I know it sounds really simple, but really just start. For example, when I started the blog and the Instagram, I had 0 followers. I mean, obviously in the back of your head, you're like, I hope people follow me and see it. But really, I think that's kind of the wrong thinking. Again, back to my point earlier, it's about providing value. So really ask yourself, why am I starting a blog? Why am I starting a podcast? Is it because everyone's starting a podcast and a blog? And if the answer is no, then that's good start. Okay, then what kind of value do you have? You know, what's your unique selling point that people can relate to and you can share, that other people will be able to learn from? So, I mean, with content, it's 2 things. You're either educating or you're entertaining. So, you know, kind of figure out which one you are and what you are doing. That'll be my advice. Just start, be genuine, and offer real value, and the rest will come. And in terms of platforms, it really depends on your skill set as a person. So for example, I know I'm good at writing, just over the years, it's just something I really enjoy to do. So I do actually just enjoy writing blogs and the Instagram captions, but you could be creative as well. Maybe like creating infographics. I've seen that recently on Instagram, and it's really amazing to see all these commercial awareness diagrams. So really think about what your strengths are and just channel it into that and see how you can marry the 2 together.
Yeah, that's really good tips. Maybe think about the podcast. No, but that's such a good tip. And the other thing I would add as well to that is not to feel like someone else is already doing it, therefore there's no point in you doing it. Because I do think that it's a huge space and everyone's going to relate to other people in different ways, you know? Yeah. So maybe someone is already doing it, but you're slightly different because of your background or because of your stance on it. Still do it. You will find that you follow, you know, you find your kind of your audience and your followers. And the other thing I would say is, and you probably agree with this as well, it often takes longer than you would anticipate, because at the start you're like, oh my god, I've got this amazing idea, I'm going to do this, and you kind of think like everyone's going to be like, this is great, you know. And it's firstly like all your friends and family are like, yay, well done, and supporting you and following you, and then you're kind of like, it goes through a bit of a lull, doesn't it, before it then starts to pick up the pace. And I would just say, don't be disheartened by that lull. Move through that lull, because it's then that you'll start to kind of actually start to find your feet with it.
I totally
Yeah.
agree. I found out with my own blog. I remember like the first 2, 3 years I had the blog, the total kind of views on it were less than I had it in like 1 year in total. So, it takes time to
Yeah.
build something of value, especially if you're using it as kind of a way to market yourself and as a USP. You just have to be really patient and consistent with it. And
Yeah.
it really does pay off.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And there are sometimes when you're just like, why am I even bothering doing this? No
Yeah.
one's reading it or whatever, but
Yeah.
I think just keep going, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've spoken about that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that'll be so useful to so many people. I want to hear about your job. So once you left university, you had quite an interesting path, because although, we've kind of said you're going to be joining Clifford Chance, what's happened before then? And then let's talk about Clifford Chance side of things.
Yeah, of course. So I graduated in 2016, and it's 6 weeks before graduation. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no training contract. I have no job. My lease is coming to an end, and I have to figure out how I'm going to stay in London. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, because of the work I was doing, my then soon to be manager found me on LinkedIn because of the work I'd just been doing. I was involved with the Society for Computers and Law. So just to backtrack a little bit, because it's quite layered. So I entered a competition in my final year for the Society for Computers and Law on the future of software and copyright law and how it applied. I didn't win, but I was highly commended. But then, again, like I said before, I was just really interested in this subject. So I remember emailing the director of the society and going, hey, I know I didn't win, but I'm really interested in what you guys are doing and I want to learn more and connect with more tech lawyers. And although the first prize was to go to the annual conference, and I was like, can I please come anyways? And, she said yes. And while I was at the event, I got to network with so many industry players. And then at the end of the conference, again, I said, I really love what the society is doing. How can I get involved? And she basically said, funny enough, we've been thinking about starting a student ambassador role or board. Would you like to join? And also on top of that, we've got the editorial advisory board. Would you like to contribute articles to it? And so that's basically how I started with the Society for Computers and Law. They do tech law for everyone. So they have events, seminars, and people like Richard Susskind on the board of trustees. And so from there, that's what I'd been doing. So when my manager found me on LinkedIn, they were running a fintech company. So they were coding financial major shareholding disclosure regulations into a software as a service for asset managers of some of the world's largest financial institutions. And I remember going in my interview and saying, look, I have a law degree. I don't know how to code. Excel is not my best friend, but I'm really, really interested in this area of law and tech. And I would appreciate just being able to learn on the job. I was very honest in my interview. I was like, I don't even know what code looks like. But I think I did well because I got the job. So they were willing to let me learn on the job. It was kind of a hybrid role. So again, like I was saying, we got these memos from Alan and Overy, and then my job was to kind of transform them using what we call a domain-specific language, and then coding them into the software that the asset managers use. So that was my job for nearly 3 years. So, but with that, when you work in a startup, you're not just doing the job you're hired for. There's so many things that you end up doing. So, I did a bit of product management, customer success type of roles, learning about finance because I had no clue about any of these things. But by the time I left, I knew what kind of all the regulators were and how to disclose when you hold assets, etc., and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously backtracking, because again, like I said, it's a layered story. I also at the time entered my final dissertation from UCL into a competition run by the International Association of Young Lawyers. It was on, my dissertation originally was on the future of technology and the law and how it affects the legal profession. So, I ended up winning and being flown to Tokyo, where I got to meet address over 400 lawyers from around the world about my dissertation. And again, network with all these professionals who are kind of starting to build their own niche as well in tech law and legal tech. So by the time I came back, I was really fired up. And one of the reasons I went an alternative path after graduation was because I wasn't sure if I really actually wanted to be a lawyer, or I was wanting to be a lawyer because that's what you do when you go to school, all that kind of stuff. So actually that event, Tokyo, really cemented in my mind like, yes, I want to be a lawyer, and more specifically, a tech lawyer. But back then, there wasn't really a tech law training contract, so it took a while. But in the meantime, I've been part of the SCL and I've kind of been promoted throughout the time. So now I'm actually on the advisory board, which is just below the trustees, which is amazing. And I've been able to make my mark there and like do speeches in front of like Lord Justice Briggs and Richard Susskind on like the rule of law in the digital age, which still feels surreal.
That's
And
so cool.
then because of those connections as
That's
well, I'll
your badge
start
as well.
without the badge. I'll get another
I
badge.
was on the time, and also.
I don't no. I just yeah, but to me it's just kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
So within that, I still had a really strong mentorship relationship with my professor from LSE because obviously he teaches tech law, and I remember telling me, oh, I've had great fun at this fintech, but I think now I'm trying to develop my career more into legal tech. Do you know anyone or anything? So long story short, he introduced me to a partner from a law firm. They were looking to do a project, but it wasn't quite right fit. So this partner from a law firm was like, well, one of the people that I used to mentor has a company, you might be interested. And I got introduced to the company that I do work for now, which is, again, amazing, which just shows the power of networking, not
Yeah.
going around asking people for stuff, but really just being yourself, be genuine, and invest in other people. And so, yeah, he ended up introducing me to him. And so the company that I work for now, they use artificial intelligence or natural language processing to analyze commercial agreements, mainly for in-house counsel and large law firms. And it does what's called a first pass review. So, usually the triage when, like, let's say a paralegal reads through and sees if there are any major issues, the software does that. So when I first started, my job was to help train the artificial intelligence because
Wow.
obviously with AI, what you put in is what you get out. So, I'd read
Yeah.
all these different types of agreements and say, oh, does this agreement contain a confidentiality clause? Yes, no. So it's quite manual. So I'd be like training all this stuff. And then my role has evolved in that time. So now I'm what you call a customer success manager / account manager. Again, with startups, you get thrown in the deep end with responsibility. I've never customer success managed before, but you're trusted to do that. So at the moment, most of my clients are in the APAC or Asia, Australia region. And my job really is to guide them through the onboarding process, scope out like the projects that they want to do, look at the type of agreements that they usually look at and whether we have that in the system. And if we need to author properties that look into that a bit more, I'm the one that organizes that, user training, day-to-day management. So at the moment, that is what I do.
Amazing. I've got about 7 million questions, right? I'm going to try and think of them in a coherent structure. The
Okay.
first thing I would love to say is just the thing that I love about your story is just how you just put yourself forward for things and you actually try. Because I think so many people are like reluctant to either ask or even when they're networking kind of, and I remember this, like you're kind of like looking to impress constantly and you don't really relax or be yourself. You're like, what do I want to get out of this? What do I need to, instead of just kind of actually being a bit more genuine. So I love that like you kind of have said that, like if you're yourself, if you're genuine, it kind of really has a bigger impact, and actually people then actually want to help you, versus feeling like you're there to kind of get what you want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think
exactly. I
coming from
agree.
a genuine place is a really kind of good thing, but obviously that can feel quite difficult if you do kind of, if you're kind of thinking, I need a training contract or I need whatever else. So putting yourself forward, I think is amazing. But the other thing I'd love to ask you before talking about, how you actually went to be a future trainee of Clifford Chance, is many people feel like they have to do their vacation scheme and be offered a job and that's it, but you've actually gone kind of to a different role, and you've actually kind of gone, to a different kind of job before actually entering the legal industry in the kind of traditional sense. And how do you think that's beneficial? Because I'm sure there's lots of people at the moment are maybe feeling like they can't take the traditional route because it's maybe not available. And there's been many people that have actually kind of told me that this is actually hugely beneficial. I spoke to an Adelshaw Goddard partner, one of the podcasts we released last week, and someone, another couple of people as well have really said that although they didn't kind of go straight into that kind of legal role, they either went in-house or they did other things. It actually had a huge long-term benefit on their careers. So would you agree with that? Because I mean, some of the things you're talking about doing now, as a trainee joining Slaughter May, I would have not had that skill set, not even close to.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you've just said then, because I think usually we're taught to kind of go through life and school and tick some boxes, but there's that missing element about mindset and personal motivations and goals. And personally, back then, I just thought I'm way too young to be making this decision on whether or not I want to sign off at least 2, 3, 4 years of my life. What if it turns out that I don't like it at the end of the 2 year training contract? Now I have to find something else. You know,
Yeah,
I always say it's easier to come back than it is to get out and then find something else usually. So for me, just having real practical work experience made such a difference by the time I went to Clifford Chance, because I just had more professional experience. I'd grown up, and some things that are quite daunting when you first start out doing a VAC scheme when you're in your second year are not even a problem once you've just
yeah,
been in the real world.
yeah,
So definitely, I would say, I know it's pressure, but it's not the end of the world if you don't have a training contract or VAC scheme by the time you graduate. In fact, use it as a thing to pivot and actually really find out, do you really want to do this? And
mhm,
is this for you? And then if yes, what can you do to personally and professionally develop in the meantime while you work towards your goal?
And what would you say for anyone that maybe is finding themselves at the moment, graduating without, anything to kind of go forward to? What would you kind of, advise them to do?
Yeah, I was in the exact same position. So really look at yourself outside of law. What are your strengths? What are your skills? And what are your interests? Then pursue that. Try and get a job in that kind of area. Because at the end of the day, I think the only way you're going to find yourself professionally is if you actually just work. Because again, having worked in 2 startups, I know what I do and don't like in terms of how I work, who I work with, what I value in terms of culture and working style. Again, these are the kinds of things I was able to talk about in my interview at Clifford Chance, because I just knew myself a bit better. So what I would say is don't be afraid to just try. You're not going to know the answer straight away, but by doing, you'll end up knowing yourself more.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think, and I mean, this might sound like a luxury to many people at this point, but I then think when you do put yourself forward for firms or you're doing interviews, you realize it's like a two-way interview process, because it's
Mhm.
not just about them wanting you, it's about you wanting to be there as well. Because if you,
Yeah,
there's so many different kind of, areas within the legal industry, but also
yeah,
different kind of styles of firms, and, such huge differences between, the Magic Circle or your high street, wherever you, and everything in between, and even amongst Magic Circle themselves. So
yeah.
you need to make sure that it actually works for you as well. And I definitely think that many people probably feel like, oh, I just need to take anything that I can get. I don't think it's like that.
No, I think I know, like you're saying, it's a luxury, but that's literally the
Yeah.
worst thinking to have, because let's say you do get it, you're going to be miserable. So again, it's about making the right choice and making sure you're the right fit. And I know there's pressure to be in the magic circle or whatever, but I always say, as long as you're in and you're in the right place where you will grow professionally and personally more than you would in a place that you don't like at all. And to your point, I agree. I think once I started doing these applications when I was a bit more experienced, I didn't apply to everything. I only made 3 applications
Mm.
in the cycle that I did when I got Clifford Chance, and my criteria was very, very narrow and very specific. And I just cut out the noise and just did these 3 applications. And I said, this is where I want to be based on my why and what I know now and what I want to do. So
I love
definitely, yeah.
that. I love that. And as I said, it does feel very bold and very kind of luxurious to be saying, well, actually, no, don't apply to everything. Just figure out
Yeah.
which ones. But I do think that in terms of when it comes to interviews or when it comes to applications, how many applications do these law firms see? If they can tell that you genuinely want to be there because of X, Y, and Z versus I want to, I'm in my third year, second year of law, therefore I'm making my vacation scheme application. There's
Yeah,
such a difference, you know?
there is. I was reading back like my old applications versus my now successful applications, and there is a huge difference. It really does make a huge difference. And I think my newer applications were more focused. I had a strong USP, I had a strong why, and I was just very more clear and succinct rather than the general, I like commercial law because it's exciting and there's variety. Okay, well, everyone else loves that as well
Yeah,
and says that in the app,
yeah.
but beyond that, why you?
Yeah, amazing. I think that's so useful for so many people probably as well. So how did you actually, from, because you can really see that you're very happy with what you're doing at the moment and you're really loving it. So what actually made you still want to go into private practice, and how did you end up, as a future trainee of Clifford Chance?
Yeah, as I said before, when I won the competition in 2017, after Tokyo, I started to realize that maybe there is a way of marrying together being a traditional lawyer
Mm,
and my interest in tech and the skills that I've gained. But again, there really wasn't anything out there that would fit that. So I'd kind of really given up, if I'm honest, on that, and I was going to focus on an alternative career in legal tech and do it that way. And I remember I was speaking on a panel at my university, and graduate recruitment from Clifford Chance happened to be there. And, she told me, by the way, did you know we have a new tech training contract coming up? And I was like, what is that? I don't think I had heard about this. And she said, well, basically, we're going to have a tech training contract where you'll be doing the traditional fee earning billable hours work, but then you'll also have specific time put aside to innovate is the word. So maybe, whether that's coming up with new products to help clients deliver work more efficiently, helping their lawyers to do their work, etc. And I was like, oh, so it is possible.
you just
So
right job.
yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, this is great. This is what I've been thinking about, but I didn't think, existed. Because again, you always think law is so traditional. There's no way that a law firm is going to say, okay, yeah, we're going to just let you go off and not do billable hours. So even at that point though, I still was like umming and eyeing. So she said, okay, why don't you come over? Let's have a coffee and I'll tell you more about the scheme. And after we just had a chat at the offices, I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do. So I ended up doing my application. Like you said, so far in my career, I was in a pretty good position. But after I heard that, I think that was like, this is the development that I need and want. I still want to be a qualified lawyer. Even better, I get to be a tech lawyer. This is amazing. And that's basically how I ended up at Clifford Chance. But because me being me, my story always has twists and turns. So funnily enough, I did actually, obviously I did the application like everyone else. I still had to write a strong application, more research with good answers. And then they had obviously a different assessment center for this tech training contract, Ignite. So the first day was a normal assessment center. The second day, they called back the shortlist of people to do the tech-based one. And I remember waiting for the call after the assessment center to see whether I'd got it or not. And when someone's got bad news on the phone and it's not a yes. So she called, she's like, so unfortunately, you haven't got it. Everyone thought you were great, but we just weren't sure whether being a lawyer is for you because you're doing all these other things already. So instead, why don't you come for the vacation scheme and see for yourself, Clifford Chance, and then help you kind of decide whether this is for you. So it was kind of like bad news, good news, happy moment, sad moment. But obviously, long story short, I ended up going for the VAC scheme. I really did my best to show them that I was committed to not just being a tech person, but a lawyer in the traditional sense. And I was so grateful for that opportunity, really, because I know that I made the decision after having that experience, and I made it with my eyes wide open rather than just accepting something because it sounded exciting. So that is my topsy-turvy story to how I got the training contract itself.
Yeah, no, I love it because I think so many people are really scared of like twists and turns. Like I know that I used to be. Now I'm like, okay, belt up. Here we go. What's happening today?
Yep.
But exactly. Yeah, like I think like the biggest. Often it's really useful to know what you don't like doing as well. Like I think that was definitely became very clear to me, like during my traineeship, like finance, I was just like, no, like I really enjoyed my finance seat because it really gave me clarity that I was never going to be a finance lawyer. I was just like, I've got no idea what's going on a daily basis here. And I think that had I not had that strong feel, like it would have then, imagine I'd been offered like an NQ role as like a fight within the finance department, I would have been like, oh yeah, no, I'll go for it. So I think sometimes it's quite good to have those solid like things that have maybe gone a little bit wrong, or feelings that like actually that's not for me, to then help you kind of push forward to get to where you want to be.
Yes, I totally agree. I think some of my best decisions and choices came after failing really badly, or what you'd perceive as a failure or a setback. And I always say, try and fail forward. A failure is only a failure if it's not a lesson. In some cases, it's more easy to say than others, but generally speaking, my dad always taught me, just try your best to take the best out of every situation, even when it's bad, you know. I remember when I first got rejected from a VAC scheme back in second year, I ugly cried the whole day. And my dad was like, I know you're really upset, but, you know, take the feedback that they said and work on it. And then the next time you do it, and then the next time you do it, you'll be better. And before you know it, you'll be where you want to be. So it's difficult, but I hope from hearing my story, you know, from second year to now, 4 years after graduation, I'm in the place that I always wanted to be. Sometimes it takes time, and that's okay.
And just to ask you that there, if you'd got that, do you wish that you'd got that VAC scheme at second year?
No. I know it
In
sounds
retrospect,
weird,
right?
but no, I don't. I really don't. Like you're saying, I wouldn't have my badges. I wouldn't have the experiences that I
Exactly.
have now. And I wouldn't be who, I know it sounds cheesy, but I wouldn't be who I am professionally and probably personally.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the same person. So I'm
Yeah.
really, really grateful for
Yeah,
the
I just wanted to
detours.
bring that out because I do think it's very easy to feel like, you know, the setbacks at the moment, they feel so massive, don't they? And then you kind of look at them in a retrospect and you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that that didn't happen. Whether it's like
Yeah.
relationships or whether it's like, you know,
I agree.
like not getting into the university or the course that you try, whatever it might be, even the smaller things, sometimes you realize what a blessing in disguise it actually was.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, I've had so many detours from the universities I applied to end up in London instead. And again, you've just heard about my career. I think, yeah, I think detours are just a realigning of your true course. Personally, that's what I believe. It's just trying to guide you more to the path you're supposed to be on rather than what you think you're supposed to be on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's such a good way of, and that is really essentially a growth mindset, isn't it? And especially what
Yeah,
your dad was kind of instilling in you as well. It's turned of like it's all a learning, it's all a development, it's all kind of getting you towards where you're kind of ultimately meant to be.
exactly.
And therefore
Yeah,
you're gonna feel most fulfilled and happiest as well, you know, because although it's like, yes, you want the prestige of like, I worked for a magic circle law firm. Like if that doesn't make you happy or feeling fulfilled, then why are
there's
you?
no point.
No.
There really isn't. And I think there are enough stories out there that show like, you know, it's not, I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong, being offered a training contract at Magic Circle firm, but it's what I was saying to you before at the beginning of our careers. Sometimes you just have to think, you know, obviously beyond money and being financially comfortable, what do you enjoy? Where do you want to be in your life in 5 years' time? How does this align with your values and who you are? And for me, if we're talking in a career sense, I really just enjoyed my experience at Clifford Chance because the culture that I saw there was different to what the stories I'd heard in the past or people
Yeah.
say. I really saw a different face. They're really, you know, committed to that change, especially diversity and inclusion. And I know, you know, when I emailed the firm due to recent events that have been happening in the world, they were so supportive. They're like, look, don't worry, we're on it, we're working on it, we're talking about it, we're going to do something about it. And that just really shows me that's a place where I want to be, where even as a future trainee, I can kind of email core graduate recruitment and say, I'm worried about this, what's the firm doing about it? And they listen. That's very different. And I've never heard of that before.
Oh, it's amazing. And when are you actually joining the firm? Or is that?
So I'll be doing, it's still a
Sorry,
while away.
I just realized
It
as I
feels
asked that might be a
ages.
bit insensitive.
Yeah. No, don't worry about it. So I'll be doing my LPC in January 2021. I don't know whether that's going to be online or in person just yet. And then I'll start in August 21. So it's been a long wait. At
Yeah.
this point, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, it's
And
coming.
how do you, just out of interest as well, because I think that we're quite a like instant gratification kind of culture and people like want it now. And for many people, they might look and go, oh God, it's taken you like 4 years to get that, you know, thing, that training contract. And then, you know, it'll be even longer by the time you actually start. And for many
Yeah.
people, they might be like, oh, well, I'm not going to do that. I just want the one now. What
Yeah.
would you kind of say to that?
So I think sometimes instant is not always the best. So far, I got the training contract last year, and obviously in that time I've been working in legal tech. I think I've got the skills that I probably wouldn't have had before. That when I start as a trainee, I'm just going to hit the ground running. I'll probably be more comfortable just talking to clients if I'm put in front of them because I've been used to doing it already. And again, really, it's a long time. It'll be 2 years. I probably won't have the time to do this, my little passion projects. So I've just been viewing it as a way of kind of rounding off my content on Life of London Law Students, and making sure that I've got as much stuff on there that's useful and helpful, and planning content. So I'm just using that time that I probably won't have ever again for quite a while to just do the things that I like, if I'm honest, because I know it's not going to be like, oh, I can spend hours on, you know, designing stuff on Instagram and making YouTube videos. So I'm just enjoying my time now, and kind of mentally preparing myself to have a routine and just be more productive with my time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I just think you're phenomenal, and I love hearing about your twisty turn career path into the legal industry, and it's phenomenal. I think many people will probably take a step back and actually be like, do you know what? I'm going to be fine. I'm good. From hearing, you know, your story.
I hope so. I really do, because I remember how helpless I felt in second year, thinking this was just never going to work out. And I think obviously with hindsight, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. It's difficult, especially with a comparison culture, to feel like you're so far behind. But it really, just focus on yourself, focus on your lane and your own path, and you will be fine.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually kind of joined as a trainee during the 2008 recession. So I very much kind of understand how people are probably feeling at the moment. And that now in retrospect is nothing compared to now. But it was really challenging. But as you said, focusing on you, what you can do to progress yourself, your own career, not being too bothered by other people and what they're doing. It is, you know, it's very easy to get that comparison or feel that kind of imposter syndrome when you become too preoccupied with other people instead of what can I do to move myself forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even myself, sometimes I feel like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? But then I have to reset and just say, focus on yourself, Lorraine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what other people are doing. I heard a really good analogy. Yeah, I had a really good analogy the other day, which was like, you know, when you're driving to your destination, you don't focus on other people's cars. You focus on your own car and make sure you're driving down the road the right way to get to your destination. Same thing in life. Focus on your own car. You're going on your own destination and journey.
I am definitely, everyone's going to hear this in all my workshops going forward. They're going to be like, that's a great analogy. I'm like, yeah, some wise person told me it once. Amazing. And I'd love to I always finish off the interview with a couple of questions. The first one I would love to know, and I'm sure you'll have a great answer to this, is what does resilience mean to you? I'm sure your dad's going to have an underlying play in it.
I think resilience is, for me personally, is not taking things personally, first of all. Secondly, it's not ignoring reality or the truth of the situation that you are in. But for me, being resilient means making a choice about what you can and you can't control. Ignore what you can't control, focus on what you can control and change that. And that's how I view resilience and how I've used it in my life over the years. Because otherwise, if you try and focus on the things you can't control, it's not going to work out. So I always try and focus on the small, and go forward from there.
And I think that's such good advice, especially for just now when there's a lot, you know, there's so much uncertainty and so much that many of us can't control. So yeah. And I'd love to know as well, what's your number one tip for sustainable success within the legal industry?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Sorry. I think give you a bit of warning with that.
No, it's okay.
Space for a minute.
No, don't worry about it. No, I think ultimately you have to remember that law is a business of people, right? And like we were saying before about networking, it's not about using people to get where you want, but actually just build real relationships, be genuine. Don't approach people thinking, what can I get out of them? More just, what can I learn from them? And trust me, kind of that switch in mindset when you approach people makes a huge difference. And, you know, people invest in people. And that's what you have to remember. So I think that's the biggest tip I can give, especially now in an age where, you know, having a brand and presence matters more than ever. You don't want to have that reputation as someone who just uses people for their brand. So just be genuine, just come with an attitude of learning, and you'll be amazed how many doors open up for you.
You're so wise. I just want to follow you about all day. Not at the moment, obviously. No one's going anywhere. It's like a day in the life of Lorraine. Amazing. And the last thing I'd love to know is, who inspires you within the legal industry, and who do you think would be like a fantastic guest on the podcast?
Oh, this is, again, such a tough one, because there's so many scenarios.
You did. Not for the other ones.
You
But you
did,
answered them
and
if I had.
I still could. Okay, so I think, do you know what I'm going to say? I think, first of all, personally, I really give a lot to my lecturer from my third year at LSE, because he totally changed my mindset about what law was. Because back then, for me, it was just like, law is very academic. You do this, you do that. Whereas when I did tech law and information technology law, it was amazing. I learned this whole new kind of area of law. Not only that, obviously we kept in touch, and he's been such a great mentor to me, introduced me to so many people. It's been so inspiring to kind of be allowed to see some of the people in his circle and hear how they talk about tech law. And I think it's really helped my development, really, and towards where I'm going. So he inspires me a lot. So he's Professor Andrew Murray from the LSE, to shout out him. But I just think, who else inspires me is all the students on Instagram that I've seen over the last few weeks. So, we're in a strange time, and to be able to use your resources and dedicate them to helping other students and have other platforms. I think you interviewed recently Justin from Growing Mentoring. I find that amazing.
He's
And
so good.
I don't even have words. It's amazing. So, those are the kinds of people at the moment, really, that are inspiring me in terms of just our communities coming up. It's not just about hiding your application, but really helping others. But I think another person that really inspires me at the moment is Jason from the Corporate Law Academy. He basically started his traineeship at a big American firm, decided it wasn't for him. So he started this corporate law online academy, and he's been helping so many students obviously finesse their applications. They have like these online lessons and communities. So I think he'd be a very great person to interview. Just in
I'm
terms
gonna
of
have a little look. Yeah,
you should definitely look him up.
It's quite funny, actually, isn't it? Because I wasn't particularly active on LinkedIn, and then since I became particularly active in LinkedIn, you start to like develop these like networks that you're like, oh wow, like how am I like in the cool club on LinkedIn?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Where have I been this whole time?
That LinkedIn, I must say as well, is such a phenomenal resource, because you do start to kind of regularly see people, and like you feel like when I first spoke to you, I felt like I already knew you because I'd seen like loads of your posts and I'd looked on your website and stuff. So I do think that using LinkedIn can be a really kind of good tool for anyone as well. So yeah, I'm definitely going to get in touch with him. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for speaking to me today. I think so many people probably left feeling really inspired, really empowered, and just with a bit more of a clear focus as to how they can, move forward. And as you said earlier, even if it is just one step forward, it's still moving forward, and you might end up on this path, but that's fine.
And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation. It was really fun.
Well, just before I end, I just would love to direct everyone to your website again. So it's Life of a London Law Student. Really have a look for, additional resources on there, and just kind of be in touch with what you're doing as well, and see all of your amazing accolades with the Times and everything else. And the other thing I'd like to add is, obviously we release weekly episodes of the podcast. So please go to our website, leadingmindsglobal.com/podcast, and subscribe so that you're kept in touch. And also follow us on LinkedIn on Leading Minds page, so that you just kind of are kept up to date with the podcast episodes, but also just all around about sustainable success within the legal industry. So thank you so much for joining me today.